You know, first of all, just supporting them, listening to them. You could share scripture with them, you know, if they're feeling really down or depressed or anxious. There's verses about anxiety. The Psalms is great. I mean, I think David went through periods of depression. He was able to express that in a lot of ways and share ways that God kind of brought him through that. Those might be things that might be helpful to them. Giving them someone trustworthy just to talk to about what's going on in their life. That can sometimes be something that can just help them feel so much better. They may be holding in all these feelings and thoughts that they have, and they feel like there's no one to talk to. So if you give them that person to talk to, that might be really helpful to them. You know, suggest counseling. I know that that's sometimes been very resistant. But if you feel like you can't meet their needs, you can at least maybe help them to find some resources. They may not be accepting of those, but if you continue to present it to them, maybe eventually they will. And then they can maybe address some of these things more in depth than you feel like you can really help them with. And then I think just use your own experience. Give them suggestions about what you would do if you felt really down or anxious. You know, everybody's had those times in their life where they just really feel down, or they worry about things. You know, what are some things that you have done to help get out of those moods? And, you know, give them some suggestions about, well, maybe you could try this, you know, try doing this. Or, you know, once when I felt really sad, this is what I did, and that helped me feel better. You know, just kind of meet them where they're at and kind of help them see that, you know, you're not the only person that's felt this way, and maybe we can help you feel better. I'm just going to take a little break. Any questions, comments about some of those things?
When you're talking about them being supportive, do you think that it's a good idea to bring it up the next time that you see them, or wait for them to bring it up again?
You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with bringing something up. If you've had a good interaction with someone, and, you know, and you can even tell them maybe, hey, why don't I check in with you next week and see how you're feeling? You know, and kind of let them know that I care about how you're feeling, and when you follow up with them, then they know that that conversation you had was significant to you. It wasn't like, oh, we talked about this last week and now I've completely forgotten about it. But sometimes just saying, hey, can I check in with you next week, asking them permission, then kind of opens the door to talk about it again. So then they don't feel like maybe you're hounding them, like, oh, now I talked to her, now she's going to ask me every time, like, how am I doing?
Yeah.
So that might be a way that you could talk to them again about it. Any other things? And we'll have time at the end if you guys think of anything. So, the next area that I wanted to address was self-injury. This could be anything from cutting, burning yourself, excessive piercings, things like that. There's a lot of ideas about self-injury and kind of like why people self-injure. And there can be several different reasons why they might be doing it. It could just be a sign of depression. Sometimes people who are depressed can't find another way to express how they're feeling, and so they start doing that. The thing with self-injury is it kind of has an addictive quality to it. And so if someone starts doing it, then it's like they just kind of keep doing it, and it has less and less an effect of them, just kind of like drugs and alcohol do. And so that's why sometimes when kids start doing that, it's just like a perpetual thing that just keeps going and going. Usually self-injury is a sign of some deep emotional pain and an inability to express it in a healthy way. They're feeling something overwhelming. They can't really talk about it, they can't really understand it, and so the only way that they can make that emotional pain go away is to distract themselves with physical pain. And so they'll hurt themselves so that they can focus on the physical pain, and then that somehow masks the emotional pain that they don't know how to deal with. It might be emotional pain due to significant grief. It might be due to abuse. It could be just a loss of like identity or connectedness with other people. They just don't really understand who they are. They have broken relationships, things like that. Those can all be things that might cause some of those really deep emotional pains that are present. And self-injury could be a need for attention. I think that's kind of what people always go to, unfortunately, and that's not always the case. In some cases, people are doing it for attention, but most of the time, there's a really good reason why. I mean, someone is not just doing it for attention unless there's something really going on inside of them, because there's a lot of other things they could do for attention. I don't think that they necessarily go to that extreme. Maybe in some cases, very extreme cases, but most of the time there's something really significant going on that is that in self-injury is a way that they're expressing that pain. I know a lot of times when people are self-injuring, it's hard to know, like, well, is this serious enough? Are they gonna like hurt themselves so bad that they're gonna die? Like, how do I know what I'm supposed to do? And typically, self-injurious acts like cutting or piercing, people aren't trying to kill themselves. That's not what they're usually trying to do. In fact, most teens that I work with that had self-injury, when I ask them, do you want to die? Is that what you're trying to do? They would say, no, I don't want to die. This is, that's not what I'm trying to do. So typically, it's probably not a suicidal type of thing that they're trying to do. Possibly it could be if it's accompanied with them saying, I wish I was dead, I just want to die. Then I would be more concerned that the self-injury might be more of a suicide type threat. And also if their self-injury is very, like if cuts are really deep or they're along the vein instead of across the arm, like things that you could really die from. Usually the type of cutting that people do is not anything that's life-threatening. And so in situations where you think it is life-threatening, then you may have to get someone involved, let parents know, get them assessed at a emergency room hospital. I don't know what kind of policies you guys have as far as how you deal with all that, but I would say in most cases, you're probably not going to have to worry too much about that. It's usually going to be more of an emotional pain issue that they're dealing with. Some ways that you can help people who are self-injuring. Again, I'm always going to go back to talking to them, just letting them talk to you about what's going on, supporting them, encouraging them. I think it's really important to focus on what feelings are going on with them and not the actual acts of self-injury. I think it's really easy to focus on that because that's like the glaring thing. It can be sometimes really shocking maybe to you when they show you or you see what's going on. But focus on like what are you feeling or what's going on in your life that you're feeling so badly, and try to focus more on the feelings and not so much what they're doing and how they're expressing their feelings. Help them to learn better ways to express their feelings. Talking about it could be one of those. You might want to work with the person on a list of things they can do when they feel like hurting themselves. Like maybe you could call a friend, talk to a friend. A lot of people like to use art or poetry or songwriting. Like when you're feeling like this, let's find other ways for you to express how you're feeling. Now, don't get discouraged if they keep on hurting themselves. You're not professional counselors. I can't even get someone to stop cutting. That's a decision they have to make. But you can at least help them to have some skills that they can use maybe when they're feeling that way, so that they have some alternatives, because they may not have ever thought of doing something else. They just know when I feel this way, this is what I do. So if you can say, well, try something different next time, maybe if you do this, you'll feel better instead. That's and a lot of kids that have that deep emotional pain have a lot of artistic abilities. I found they love to write poetry, or they love to do art, or write songs about how they're feeling. And sometimes that can help to get some of that, some of those feelings out, so that they're not doing other things to hurt themselves.